Another offense that we've seen flashes, there's some potentially interesting weapons. There's also some serious questions about weapons. The New York Giants, under second year under Brian Dable, Daniel Jones was a star last year, shall we say, for fantasy purposes. I don't think many people saw it coming. Do you think that he can continue to improve and bring more kind of fancy production out of those skill position players heading into year two?
I do, and it's like you look at what the final point on this chart we got on screen. Daniel Jones is less working against him than ever before. Last year he didn't have the weapons. You go back before that, and he was dealing with people like Jason Garrett and Joe Judge, who just, they weren't fantastic. They didn't get the best out of him. They didn't seem to be coaching him to his optimum. But Brian Dable seems to be really doing it. He got Daniel Jones' turnover rate completely down. Daniel Jones seemed better at his decision making than perhaps at any other point in his career. And I'm not sure if Daniel Jones is going to rush for sort of, 700 yards or so like he did last season. But I think he can be way more productive in the passing game to make up for that. Last year, they went from, before Brian Dable was there, they had the league's worst red zone success rate at 44%. Last year, that jumped to 60%, which was the fifth best in the league. They've got all these options who can, I feel like they can take another jump forward with that simply because now they've got better options at wide receiver because you bring in someone like Darren Waller. They brought in all these other slot receivers and small-bodied guys. But Darren Waller's that inside-outside tight end who can play on the boundary, he can play at the seam, he can play all over the place. He's been a good red zone weapon for Derek Carr over the last few years. So I think he's going to be great. I mean, he's averaged 7.5 targets per game over the last 4 years, and even in a subdued last year, he had 5 targets per game with the Raiders. So I think he's going to be huge for Daniel Jones. I think Saquon Barkley, was disappointing to not see the Giants and him come to terms on a long-term deal. But that just means that Saquon Barkley is again in a contract year. He needs to go out and put it all on film so that teams will want to pay him next year. It's an uphill struggle for him, but he can do it. He can go out. He can have a career year, I think. Outside of that, the wide receivers, it gets pretty muddy. I don't mind taking shots on Isaiah Hodgins. We saw him have a really good finish to last year after he was claimed. I think it was off waivers for the Giants. And then outside of that, Darius Slayton, I'm kind of interested in a little. Jalen Hyatt is an interesting rookie, but didn't really run a lot of different routes whilst he was in college. So it's kind of hard to project him for a huge role. Down the stretch, stranger things have happened. And of course, Wan'Dale Robinson should be back and healthy at some point.
Yeah, I feel like this is an offense of two parts. I think the primary options, Daniel Jones, Darren Waller, Saquon Barkley, I really like for fantasy purposes. And I think that this offense can be good enough to sustain all three. The secondary options, I don't want any part of them for fantasy. But in terms of NFL play, they are competent NFL starting caliber players. Whether that be Jamison Crowder, Sterling Shepard, hopefully Jalen Hyatt comes in and produces. But those are guys that are competent and they will allow the other players to get fancy production. Daniel Jones isn't going to be thrown to scrubs off the street. He's now got NFL caliber wide receivers, which can allow him to take that step in the passing game.